All right, lecture 5, how is wealth created? Now, a lot of you, when you came to college, you basically are looking to create a career to make money, and not everyone is. I didn't start out that way. But let's talk about what the prospects are and what the averages are coming out of the University of Wyoming. I spent some time digging through the Bureau of Labor Statistics information for this and tracing it. The average person with a BS in computer science will make about $79,000. That's an approximate number. I think it's $78,800. Graduating, UW, it's a little bit higher. We do a little bit better job, $82,000. And out of that, you can expect for about 5 to 6 years that you're going to get raises as you get good at your profession and learn what's involved. So somewhere out there in 5 or 6 years, you're probably going to end up, and UW graduates do this, at about $102,200 a year. And that's pretty good. This is not a job at Wendy's. I'll give you that much. Now, the average UW student has about $22,800 in loans, and they have about $5,000 in credit card debt when they graduate. So these are minus, this is a plus. Now, this is all good and good stuff. Good stuff, you can go get a job still today in New York City and you're going to make more than this, but your expenses are going to be higher. No, it works out on them about the same. You can go get a job in Cedar Rapids, Idaho. You probably won't make this much. They do hire in Cedar Rapids, Idaho. And but your expenses won't be as much. This is all good stuff. Now, let's say that you follow the bank's prescription for paying this off. And, I've been in some banks and end up on the shelf. They've got that little bowl there with the candies in it, the lollipops. You pull one out and it's a dum-dum. And I've always wanted to ask them this question. Is that a comment on your customers? Because that's what they put up there is dum-dums. Now, if you follow their prescription, you're going to pay these things off in between 20 and 25 years. And your total for your student debt is going to come out to somewhere around $68,000 that you will have total paid with interest. My general recommendation to you is that you don't take 20 years to pay that off, and you pay off your credit cards right away, like every month, and don't carry a balance forward, and you don't end up in this position. The credit card is even worse. You will pay more than $10,000 in interest if you pay it off at the minimums. You will pay way more, because this is low interest rate. This is probably 18 to 21% per year. And that is a killer. That makes you go into McDonald's and you buy that hamburger and you pick it up for $7-8. And if you finance it for 30 years on a credit card, you will have paid over $100 for that hamburger. So think about that in terms of credit cards. But that's significant. If you pay it off right away, it's not, but it will set you back. Now, let's talk a little bit about my friend Rich. He graduated at the same time I did. And Rich was one of those people that just, stayed between the lines and did what you're supposed to all the time, I guess. He went out and got a job. And he worked for the same company for 32 years. 12 years in, he got a master's from University of Wyoming. 12 years in, he actually went back and got an MBA, which increased his income some. About $20,000 a year. $20,000 a year. Eventually about $40,000 a year. So that helped. I'm not saying that. And, don't take any of this stuff to mean that I think that it's a bad idea to get a degree. It's great. The rate of return on a University of Wyoming engineering degree is something like 14% per year compounded. And you would be hard-pressed to go out there and find some other thing that you can invest in that's going to give you that kind of rate of return. And the rate of return for a master's is even higher. So I would recommend that if you have the opportunity to not just finish your degree now, but finish your degree and go on to graduate school, do so. It's a good investment in your future. But let's talk about Rich. He went out and worked for this company. He started about an average salary. He got raises for 7 years. He worked for a while. Then he got an MBA and he got into management. He got raises for about 5 years after that. And In today's dollars, he was making about $148,000 a year when he retired 32 years later. And fortunately for him, they had a defined benefits retirement plan, which he's now collecting on. But, out of that, okay, he and his wife is an RN, they had some kids, lots of good things. They bought a house, they paid for it eventually. But out of that set of things, he had about $400K in savings, and his house, not the first one, his second house that he actually paid for, was worth about $625,000. So you put those together, and he became a millionaire by staying between the lines. Okay, just get a good job, work it, pay for things. They had lots of nice cars. They had a good lifestyle. They took trips to Europe. All good things. All good things. So there's some benefits to home ownership. Okay? But that's kind of how a good job works. Now, if, on the other hand, you do some other things and you start recognizing what is happening in the world, and the fact that a job means you're working for somebody else and they're the capitalist, not you, if you get involved directly in the capitalist system, you can make a lot more money than this. Now, what do I mean by a lot more money? I mean millions. To give you some idea, I've worked now 15 years. That includes me working for McDonald's in high school. I liked McDonald's, actually. It was a good place to work. I learned a lot. It did me a lot of good. But that's been my total working career, is 15 years. I have not worked very much. I have taken off 2 years to do kilns and do pottery. I've taken off a year for travel. I've taken off 11 years for going boating and other things. So mostly, if you looked at my career, you'd say what he has done is he has been on vacation most of his adult life. So there's something to that. I wasn't too keen on having a job and a career. I just wanted to go play. And, when I came to college, my goal was not to make money. So that's kind of the way that works. Now, if you just get a job, unfortunately, what I would tell you is that most people, it doesn't do them that much good. I think of a job as an acronym. I call it the journey of the broke. Because everything they make, they spend. They were broke when they made $20,000 a year. They were broke when they made $100,000. They were broke when they made $160,000 a year. They live from paycheck to paycheck, and that's all they have at the end is they pay their bills. Okay, and there's lots of forces out there in this world trying to get you to do exactly that. I mean, the car salesman, when your car has 100,000 miles on it, you say, is it a good time to buy a new car? He'll go, oh yeah, this is the perfect time to buy a new car. Because he wants to sell you a car. So there's lots of people out there that are going along that want to get you to spend all your money, every bit you'll make now and in the future. Okay? So, what about it? You can do other things. And the question kind of is, how do you do other things and what are the choices that you make? Now, before we get done, I'm going to actually run through a scenario. And it's not a computer science scenario, but I will tell you this much. It's one that I've done multiple times, both for myself, a friend I've worked with. My daughter is doing it right now. Okay, she's about to graduate here from university. She worked very hard, took her university money that we had saved for her to go to school and invested it in property and actually is building a commercial real estate business for herself. Okay, does that mean that's the only thing she'll do? No, she's about to graduate. She may move someplace and go do something different. I don't know. But yeah, this is something I have done, I have seen done, and this is not some zero down crazy thing. I'd suggest that most of the time, if you're going to buy some piece of property, you put at least half down, if you can. And so it's a 50% down, and you learn how to maintain it and work on it and build it yourself. But you look at Rich, he did good. Okay, I'm not saying that. But at the end, he's retired now and he's trying to go, can I live off of Social Security and my retirement fund and the small amount that I get from my defined benefits fund? And it's not exactly what I would call the most happy. It's not sad, but there he is. He's put 32 years into work and he hasn't gotten that much out of it. He has participated in a fallacy, and that first fallacy is that if you just get a good job, you will be fine. You have to have a plan. You have to have a direction where you want to go. And if you don't have a plan, what's going to happen to you is that, yes, those who don't have a plan end up where they intended to end up. Nowhere. If you do have a plan, I had a plan by the time I got done with school. Did I end up there? No, generally my plan failed, okay? Over and over, but I still kept revising the plan and I kept working towards that goal. And across the years, that goal, because I had a goal and a direction, I ended up better off than not having one at all. Now, the first time I heard the statistic, I went, this just utterly can't be true. But here it is. 95% of people in the US by age 65 are either dead or broke. And the first time I heard that, my bullshit meter just completely redlined. I went, we are in the richest country in the world. This cannot possibly be true. Here's another way of looking at that. The Bureau of Labor Statistics last year figured that 60% of the US population cannot survive a $400 emergency without borrowing money. You know, this is not a big emergency. This is their refrigerator broke and they'd like to have a new one. This is the water heater has to be replaced. Okay? But you go look for yourself. You go do some research. You go find out that, yes, this is the case. The average 65-year-old in the United States has less than $200 in savings. The average 18-year-old in the United States has more savings than the average 65-year-old. And yes, most people, they spend every cent that they make. They have no plan, and this is where they're at financially. So my suggestion to you is that you do not participate in this. Okay? It is relatively straightforward. It takes some effort and some time, but you can put yourself, instead of in the 95, you can put yourself in the 5%. Okay? And if you work it, and you're persistent, and you keep working it when it doesn't go right, and you adjust, and you keep working it, eventually people will look at you and they will say, you're wealthy. You won't feel wealthy, I'll tell you that much. But in a certain sort of sense, you will be wealthy. Okay? You will not have the problems that they have. You will not be financing cars. You will just, okay, we'll just write a check for it and just pay for it. Okay? Yeah. So what is it that separates these two things? And how do you get from the, I did this down the straight and narrow, to the, yes, I created wealth? Now, before you get delusional here, I am not saying every kind of wealth is money. There are lots of kinds of wealth that are not financial. They are not money. And when Mozart, or maybe we should do Ludwig van Beethoven, when he created when he created that, he made the world a wealthier place. It was better off. And that wasn't financial. I don't think he made money on the concerts. He made money doing sheet music that taught people how to learn how to play piano. And he ended up being a wealthy person in his lifetime. But it wasn't off of his concerts. Okay? But that also reveals to us our second financial fallacy. And that fallacy is that the world is a zero-sum game. I actually had a class here at UW in economics in which the book was The Zero-Sum Game. And it is not true. Because after the concert was written, the world was a better place. Okay? And if you go out and you write a piece of software that does something for somebody, the world is a better place than it was before you wrote it. It is not zero-sum. That's easy to figure out. And I think a lot of people get into this fallacy of zero-sum because they grow up in a family and their parents only have so much money and they're not growing their wealth, okay? And consequently, they get an allowance and their allowance is so much, and that's all that it is. And it doesn't change. And they kind of get in that mentality of, well, there's more month than money. Okay? Well, only a few participate in that plan. You don't have to. You have the opportunity to do something else. And certainly blockchain is one of those. I will talk to you also about the fact that I don't even think it's the bigger one of the two that's going on right now in computers. Blockchain is only one of two, maybe three major revolutions going on right now in the computer field. Gartner, which does forecasts, I think I've mentioned this before, their forecast for 15 to 20 years from now is that blockchain will represent around 3% of the world economy. It's a big world. That's trillions of dollars a year. That's more than the entire IT field is today. That's bigger than Microsoft and Google and Oracle combined in 15 years. So that is a tremendous amount of wealth being created. And that's the smaller of the two.